Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Yadira Avendano, and I'm a volunteer at Highline Heritage Museum here with Julie Wise, Director of King County Elections. Hello, Julie. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk everything elections. It's my favorite subject.
Yes, and good, right? Because you're the Director of King County Elections. And so let's start off with, could you share a little bit more about what it means to be the Director of King County Elections, maybe a little bit about what you do and how you got to be where you're at now?
Being the Director of Elections is one of the greatest privileges that I've had. It's also a really great challenge too. I really truly believe at the end of the day, as the Director of Elections, that my responsibility is to our voters. Our voters elect this position for a 4-year term. I'm serving my 2nd term. And what I believe my role is to remove barriers to elections and therefore increasing access for all. At the end of the day, I'd love to see 100% voter registration and 100% turnout. And so what we're working hard at the elections office, again, is to remove those barriers, ensure we have easy access, because we know that democracy is at its finest when all voices are heard. And so we know that government can also sometimes be unnecessarily complicated. And that's what we're trying to not have happen in elections, because again, we really want all voices to be heard. And how you do that is by voting. So that's the great privilege and honor that I have as the elected Director of Elections. It is a nonpartisan position. Myself personally, I've had 20 years experience working at King County Elections. Started 20 years ago working on the front lines, answering phones. I've worked in nearly every single job in the department over the last 20 years, 10 of which we had polling places, 10 of which we've been vote by mail. I'm a nationally certified and a state certified election administrator. And I'm not joking when I say vote by mail and elections is my favorite subject. It really, truly is. So it's a great honor to serve the voters of King County in making sure that we're running secure, accurate, and accessible elections. I fundamentally believe that you can and you have to do both, and that it's my responsibility in charge of the elections office to do just that.
Yeah, wow, I can definitely feel the passion and I am loving it. My next question is, well, as you mentioned a little bit, Washington State has been officially a vote by mail state since 2009, even though many Washingtonians have been able to vote by mail years before that with very few notable issues. Could you share some insights regarding the legitimacy of mail-in voting? I know that right now mail-in voting is being scrutinized, and many individuals who are able to vote for the first time or have started to consider voting are being bombarded with many debatable remarks that can further create some disillusionment or distrust, wanting to have a say on what goes on in our community through voting. So could you share some of those insights that you have based on all of the knowledge that you and experience that you have?
Absolutely. I find myself ahead of this presidential election 2020 in a campaign against misinformation, and really wanting to make sure that we don't lose voters due to the misinformation that's circulating out there at a national level. There's definitely been a lot of questions and concerns about vote by mail. And what I can guarantee you is that vote by mail is a secure and accurate system that we have in the United States for voting. In fact, I would argue that it is the most secure and accurate and accessible form of elections that this country has. What we see here is when we look at the data, when we look at the truth here around voter fraud, I've heard that thrown around quite a bit. Let's talk about what the data tells us. So the data tells us that in 2018, King County Elections had over 1 million ballots returned. Ultimately, we identified 17 voters, which would amount to 100,000%, where we had concern about that they potentially voted twice in that election, but not within Washington State. That was when we compared our voter data rolls to 30 other states that we identified 17 voters in which we were concerned. We submitted those directly to our prosecuting attorney's office. But again, that concern for voter fraud is so low. Again, 100,000% is the fraud that we saw in the midterm election. And again, the prosecuting attorney's office will continue to do some investigation there to see if those ultimately really were voters voting twice in Washington State and then another state. But Washington State has worked incredibly hard over the last 16 years specifically with countless reforms and laws on the books to ensure that we're running accurate elections. What we have here in Washington State is a great system in which we're focusing our election administrators on running one type of an election, and that's vote by mail. What we see jurisdictions doing across this country is having to do polling place elections and their absentee voters as well. Those are fundamentally two separate sort of systems that they're trying to run and navigate. We see concerns and issues. I can also say that when I ran polling place elections myself, no fault to our poll workers, our amazing poll workers, but when you hire 8,000 people and you have to secure 700 different locations, it becomes a risk management issue when you are trying to make sure that everything is done accurately at all of those polling locations for poll workers, average age 76, who get a few hours of training to do that important job. So what we have here in Vote by Mail is we have certified election administrators, full-time paid employees who are election experts that are handling our ballots. So we reduce the amount of risk, the amount of handoffs, and we see lower voter fraud rate actually in vote by mail than we do at polling places. We're able to account for every single ballot in vote by mail. And so, and reconcile down to the ballot for every election. I think that that's really critical and important. So the facts are voter fraud is minuscule in vote by mail. And that this again is a secure, both from a cybersecurity and a physical security standpoint, as well as an accessible voting option for voters. And we see that with the amount of turnout that you see. You typically see your vote by mail states, your 8 vote by mail states have the highest voter turnout compared to the rest of the states in this country. We're top 10 in most elections. And so I think that that's also important to note too, is not only do we have the security, the accuracy, minuscule amount of voter fraud, we also see the turnout. So the voter fraud, misinformation about vote by mail is not accurate.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that it's really important that we are just as loud as other individuals who are passionate, right? Because I'm sure that there's a lot of uncertainty because many states aren't as experienced as Washington is with mail-in voting. So I can see where the anxiety is coming from, but I think that we definitely have the duty of being like, I hear you, but also we've been doing this and this is how we've been doing it, and look at the results and look at the data. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Absolutely.
Something that I'm really curious about too is I believe that if we know a little bit more about what goes on after the ballot is mailed in or dropped off, then it was more likely that people will trust the voting process and want to vote. So could you please share how Washington's ballots are sorted and counted? Like, who does that? What happens to it once they drop it off?
Absolutely. I think that that's part of this misinformation, right? Is you put your ballot into one of those ballot drop boxes or to a blue USPS box, and it just sort of disappears. And you really don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So that is understandable to have questions or concerns about things that we don't know about, right? So we have a really detailed process at the King County Elections headquarters based in Renton. We have over 100,000 square feet facility that is specifically designed for vote by mail elections, which is really critical and crucial. So I think it's really important to recognize that we have been at this work for a decade to make sure that we have a lean, streamlined approach. So what I love to do is I'd love to give tours of our facility. Unfortunately, amid COVID, that hasn't been as much of an opportunity as of late. But when I have an opportunity to give anyone who has concerns or questions about vote by mail a tour of our facilities, they leave believers. They leave as believers in the vote by mail system because there is clearly a lot of work that is put into processing ballots. So we're prepared ahead of this presidential election to see about 1.3 million ballots returned to King County Elections. The very first stop that every single one of those ballots is going to take is through our sorter machine. So if the ballot's coming in through the drop box at 50% return, and through the mail, we're seeing 50% return, they're all gonna go through the sorter. What's great about that is the very first thing it's gonna scan in your ballot so that when you go online and you track your ballot, you'll see that we have it in our office, we've got it in our hands, so you don't need to be concerned if it's still making its way to our office. What that sorter also does is take a picture of your signature. That's right, we need a signature on everyone's return ballot envelope. That is critically important. Usually use your Department of Licensing ID or driver's license as kind of your guide to how you sign, as that's the way we get a lot of our signatures. But in vote by mail, that signature is going to be the piece in which we ensure you and only you voted your ballot and someone else did not get a hold of your ballot. So that sorter is going to take a picture of your signature for us to use in step 2. The machine is also incredibly smart. It's weighing and detecting if that ballot maybe has no ballot in it, or maybe people got creative at home and put multiple ballots in it, which we don't recommend. And that machine is also detecting if there's no signature at all on the return envelope, because we want to reach out to those voters as soon as possible because we can still count their ballot. We just need to get a signature. And that machine is also slicing the top of the envelope, preparing it for when we're going to go on to the third step, which is opening. So the machine's doing a lot. That's step 1, sorting. Once that occurs, then the voters' ballots is virtually going to go over to signature verification, where we've got a trained group of individuals that have been trained by the Washington State Patrol to look and see for the 3 similar characteristics within your signature. I know we all kind of do signatures, maybe a little bit different each time. Maybe we were in a rush with our ballot. Maybe we're doing it on a steering wheel or on our knee. But we typically, 99% of ballots, we can see that that signature, in fact, matches up with one of the signatures we have on file for you, because we'll keep as many as possible so that we have multiple signatures to review. 1% of those ballots, the signature does have an issue and we need to follow up with the voter. We're going to do that right away because we have 3 weeks until after election day till we certify that we can still get your signature issue resolved because we want to count your ballot. So if you get a message from King County Elections after election day, make sure to read that and respond promptly. But we're going to email you, we're going to call you, and we're going to send you a letter through the United States Postal Service if we have any concern about your signature. It's important that on the back of your return envelope to put your phone number and your email address. We will never, ever provide that to the public. That is private information, is not to be disclosed with the public. So we never would with campaigns or anything. That is just for us to be able to use to reach out to you. So if you do note one of those, that's very helpful for us. Once we have the signature matches, then it's going to go on to the third step, which is opening. We've got a great team of individuals that very quickly remove your security sleeve that has your envelope or your ballot tucked into it from that outer envelope that has your return signature and your information. This is where we sever the tie between how you voted and your information, because you have the right and we have a responsibility to ensure that your ballot is private and secure and accounted for. And so we're going to sever the tie between the voter and their votes. And we do that very quickly. In fact, if you've ever noticed, we actually have holes within each of those envelopes, the security sleeve and that outer envelope. You wonder why. Two things. One, it ensures that we have removed all of the pieces out of those envelopes. Nothing is stuck in there that accidentally doesn't move on to the important next step, which is counting the ballot. It also makes it easy for us to zip tie those together because we're also going to keep all of the paper related to this election for 22 months. In case there was any issue or a recount or a concern, we can go back and look at all of that. And I think that's another aspect why vote by mail is so secure. It might sound old school, but you've got a paper ballot to go back to. There's no internet voting or on a memory card. It's all old school paper that we can go back to and really look what the voter voted, and we can do, again, recounts or audits on those ballots as well. Once they've opened and prepared those ballots, then they're going to go on to the tabulation or scanning. In King County, we have digital scanning. What does that mean? It means that we get to start processing ballots as soon as we start receiving them, because the machine really just sees it as an oval filled in at an XY coordinates. It doesn't attribute a vote to an individual, a candidate, or to a ballot measure issue. That doesn't happen until 8 p.m. on election night, when, if you will, we'll push the button and it will accumulate those results. The earlier that voters get their ballots in, the more meaningful results we have on election night. So it takes about 24 hours to process a ballot. We've got a wonderful team at King County Elections that are paid union employees that do great work at handling our ballots.
That's so amazing. That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That was very insightful. And now I'm thinking of like all of these people doing all of their work, and I'm super excited about making a difference, right? And making sure that everybody's information is secure and accurately documented. It's awesome.
And I
So
should mention
yeah.
just really quickly that we have, while I can't do tours with COVID, we do have web cameras that show.
Oh.
So the minute that we all start processing ballots and doing that work, voters from the comfort of their home can watch up to 8 different web cameras, really great quality web cameras, where you can watch those teams hard at work processing those ballots as well.
That's awesome. Okay, that I would really love. So how do we get to the cameras? Is it like on the website or?
Yes, it's just on our website at kingcounty.gov/elections. They're of course not live now because we're not working. We don't have any ballots, but as soon as we start processing ballots in late October, that link will be live, but it's just right on our website, and I'd be happy to provide that link to you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And everybody should be able to have access to that too, so nobody can say nothing. Awesome. And so for my last question, is there anything that you wish you could have the opportunity to highlight at this time? I know that election day is approaching, and given the worldly circumstances, this election season has had and will most likely continue to have many obstacles. Is there something that you just want people to absolutely be certain of?
There's so many things I want to say to our voters. Most importantly, I'll start with the first 2 that I think is critically important, which is you matter. Your voice matters and it needs to be heard. So really would love to see every single person voting. In fact, we've challenged our King County voters to a 90% turnout, which would be the highest King County has ever seen and may be a national record, but I believe we can do it. I believe that we have it in us to all turn out and make our voices heard, because every voice matters. So if you're questioning if you want to engage or if your vote's really going to count, it does. It does. In fact, we still see election after election with just a very, very small difference, sometimes just a handful of votes that makes the ultimate decision of who's going to be elected to be your leader. So really every vote matters, and I encourage people to make sure to vote in this election and to vote early. I'm strongly encouraging my friends and family and my neighbors, get your ballot in by the end of October. Don't even worry about November, just get it done by the end of October, and that way you can make sure and feel confident that the elections office has your ballot. So I think that a lot of voters would really benefit from making a vote plan. And a vote plan really entails, first off, going to votewa.gov. Votewa.gov is where you can register to vote within just 3 minutes. It's where you can also verify and make sure that we do have you registered at your most current address. We're going to start mailing ballots out in mid-October. So every single voter in King County should physically have their ballot in their hand by October 20th. If they do not, they should give us a call at 296-VOTE. And that way we can either get one out to them, or you can always go onto our website at kingcounty.gov/elections, and you can actually print out the same ballot that I'm mailing to you in mid-October in case you need a replacement ballot. So you can do it that way as well. So when you make your vote plan, again, make sure you're registered, make sure we've got all the up-to-date information so there's no delay in you receiving your ballot. Vote early. All the issues and the candidates and all of their statements are going to be provided to you in a voter's pamphlet. you're going to receive two, one from the Secretary of State's office and one from King County Elections, that will make up all of the issues that you're going to have on your ballot. We also have that information already on our website. So if you want to start figuring out who and how you want to vote, you can start doing some of that research now, but get prepared for that. And again, really make sure that you get your ballot in early, and please encourage your friends, family, and neighbors to make sure that their voice is heard and to get their ballot in early as well. Track your ballot and know that we are here for you. When you call 296 vote, 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, the first menu you get is just what language preference you would like, so that we can speak to you in the language that you prefer. Other than that, you are speaking to a human being, and we are here to help. If you'd like to email, you can email comments.elections@kingcounty.gov. And of course, again, you can go to our website. I highly encourage and ask every single viewer to please follow us on social media. We have some really great tools out there, some really great information, and we want to share all of the things that we've created. So if you go to our website, we've got a social media toolkit where we've got all the fun graphics that we're going to be using in this election, our Hit 90 campaign, and all of that fun stuff, all designed so you can just plug and go. So any help to get the word out. I think it's really important too, just really quickly on a couple of other side notes, there's some misinformation. I am confident in the United States Postal Service's ability to provide our voters with their ballots in a timely manner. And the reason why is in the primary election, we saw that 99.96% of our voters received their ballot within the 5-day delivery time period that the USPS provides. And so we also are tracking your ballot with an intelligent mail barcode as it makes its way to you. And if you use the United States Postal Service to return it back to us, we're going to track it, and we're going to know if there is an issue with timely delivery. We're going to know when and where that is so that we can resolve it with our post office partners. We've cultivated that relationship over the last decade, and so I have a lot of trust and faith in the post office. When we look at the grand scheme of things, we need to remember too, the post office mails 433 million pieces of mail every single day. So they've got the 1.4 million ballots as a drop in the bucket to them. So they're prepared, we're prepared. Drop boxes are such a great tool. We have 72 of them across King County, meaning 96% of our voters have one within just a couple mile radius of their home. We'll have 8 vote centers out there for people too. You can register all the way up to and including election day. But I went late, I would just do it right now on VoteWa, but we will be there for you. We also have our equipment for accessible voting units as well. So we have adaptive equipment to be able to hear the ballot, to be able to enlarge the ballot, to be able to use a Braille keypad for that, as well as sip and puff devices as well for our voters with disabilities. But I want our voters to know we are here for you. And we stand ready and willing to support you in any of your questions or concerns.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. I think this was just perfect. Thank you so much for spending time with me and teaching me, honestly, because a lot of these questions I got from my friends and some of the my peers, but also I was just curious because I've been saying, hey, it's important to vote, but then I've also been like, I don't know what happens once I put it in the box. I hope it goes where it's supposed to be. So
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for such a great opportunity and turning out the vote. Let's go vote.
Yes, let's go vote. All right.